Those are the guys that are there for you. They're there for your restaurants. They're there for your frontline employees, when the chips are down. Okay, big news, Kristen. Huge surge in leisure travelers planning trips in the next 6 months. I think everybody's, getting more comfortable with, vaccines rolling out and all that kind of good stuff and all that pent up demand we've been talking about.
Yep.
So with that, you and I have been talking about that's going to create a surge in advertising from destinations hitting the marketplace. And let's kind of kick off there and see, what kind of thoughts we have for maybe smaller destinations who don't have that Hawaii budget.
Right. Yep. Sounds good. Yeah, I think we've been talking about it for, a few months now, with the staycationers kind of, being the focal point for a lot of destinations, that those guys that we can kind of draw from inward. So DMOs are focusing a lot of their efforts from an internal standpoint. How can we bring our residents and our regional travelers and our regional planners, how can we bring some of that back into the destination? But we also have an entire market out there where, they're not quite ready to travel, but they're planning their travel, and they're making plans, and they're executing on those plans. We're getting into a point now where spring breaks right around the corner. There's a lot of pent up demand for not just, getting out on a road trip, but actually taking a bigger leap of faith when it comes to travel.
I think there's that. And I think there's also, of course, you can especially see from the Pinterest trends, people are really dreaming about those bucket list places they really want to go. And also it's less expensive now. When you take overseas appetite out of it, you're only talking about a few main places really in the continental US. So again, I think there's some opportunity for smaller destinations to pull out these more unique experiences. Like, what do you have that's a bucket list? What do I have to do? When we go in. So I think those are the things that are going to help them kind of cut through the clutter with the inevitable increased spend in the big boys.
Yeah. And I think I think when we're thinking creatively too, and how to think creatively in terms of some of these campaigns, a lot of it is about looking at it from not just the holistic destination standpoint, but also some of those experiences within the destination that really call attention to that place. It may not be the entire destination as a whole may not be as attractive as one particular fun, exciting, trendy thing that happens in that destination that actually brings them in and gets them to experience a place that they wouldn't have otherwise thought about experiencing.
I think that's so true.
Yeah, segments there.
And especially for those who have considered themselves, a major meetings market, I think there's some opportunity, and I'm sure we've made this suggestion before, but it becomes even more so opportunity for the micro meetings, the more Smurf meetings, those leisure slash groups and gatherings. We know that friends and family are dying to get together, so that's going to happen.
Right.
So I think that some of those are really, really going to hit off. But I think all of what I'm concerned about. So here's the tea. What I'm worried about is that people are going to see these numbers and they're like, okay, travelers are ready to travel. We're back to normal. Here we go.
There's still a lot of hurdles. I mean, there's a lot of things still happening in the media. You still have a lot of the talks about, what is air travel going to constrict us with in terms of, what do you need to travel? Is it going to be a negative COVID test? Is that going to be a requirement at some point? There's a lot of those things that are still up in the air, and a lot of conversations still happening on those things. And I think until a lot of that stuff flattens out and we kind of have a really good understanding of how travelers will be able to travel a little more normal. We can't say normal, but a little more normal to what they're used to. We really can't, we definitely can't. We're not in a state to predict that.
Or even, I think that that is gives us a longer tail look at how the DMO functions and does all those kind of things. But also, it's not like it's going to snap its finger and go back to what you had yesterday. I mean, I think we're all having to do a lot more with less. It's not like that budget's going to magically just happen overnight that you enjoyed in 19 or 18. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more strategies that I think have to be, kind of in play there.
Right.
But I think the creativity is really going to be interesting to see how, a lot of destinations and travel partners really position themselves. I think collaboration, especially destination wide collaboration, is going to be more important than ever. I think we have kind of a short term, I say short, 1 to 2 year shift in your competitor set that you may not be thinking about. So that's why I think this is like it takes a village, right? It's going to take all
Right.
your stakeholders working together and you working together, because I feel like 2021, we know it didn't come in too nice, but now that we have a little bit of good news, I think it takes some critical thinking. And because we have a little less to do that work with and that advertising with, I think it's going to be a tougher year for
Mhm.
strategy and deployment than even 2020 was. Because 2020, there was like no choices, right? You're just like, okay, we can't do this. We're down. We have to stop marketing. Everybody's closed. But in 2021, we're in this like hopscotch, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's still tricky to pin down a clear direction. So
Mhm.
you got to kind of maneuver. But I really still feel like 2021 in general, even the sentiment is what it is, and we do see that travelers, there is an uptick. There is definitely a bigger interest, more planning happening, more travel expected to hit. But I still think it's going to be the travel market that is taking a longer trip. I feel like it's still definitely going to be more of the road trip style aspect. It's going to be still a little more of a safer
Yeah.
adventure for those guys, and a little bit more intentional. So instead of a quick something here or a weekend there or a long weekend here, I really feel like we're still in that planning mode where we can think about a more intentional trip taker, those that are inviting more people. So we're still talking about those with friends and family type trips, but also doing more within that time frame. So instead of a week long, it might be a 10-day, it might be a 2 week, it might be a month long. And in that is multi-destination. So where you talk about, partnering up with the competing markets, finding a true road trip style journey, whether it's, on a really popular road trip road. What destinations can we partner with along that route
Like
that
Route
bring,
66 kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, bring a holistic experience to these guys? Because it really still feels like that is where that intentional traveler is going. It's definitely still going to lean more to those that can get on the road and take a little bit more of a safer trip, but take a longer trip. And so the creativeness around that part of travel, I feel like, is where a lot of the DMOs need to be thinking about.
Yeah, I
Uh,
totally think so too, because I think even though the appetite is obviously shifting, there's still a risk level of appetite. So I think it's going to be like a 1, 2, 3. So it's put my toe in the water, put my toe in the water, and then maybe it's the bucket list destination, which then kind of flips what we talked about and gives those smaller destinations still a natural advantage for a little while.
Well, yeah, and I think the bucket list, I mean, when we say bucket list, I feel like that's redefined in 2021. A bucket list doesn't mean I got to jump an ocean anymore. Doesn't mean I got to go to the ends of to the ends of the earth and like climb the pyramids anymore. The bucket list is different. I think it's defined as a lot of things. I mean, I've seen a lot in, especially on Pinterest. Of course, that's where everybody's doing their bucket list pinning.
Yep.
A lot of it is aimed at national parks. A lot of it is aimed at, places here within the U.S. that, again, road trip worthy type places. But also those little adventures that you just, when you're thinking about your bucket list 2 years ago, you were thinking about these really extreme places, like places that you just,
Yeah.
you want to get to before you kick the bucket, the true bucket list. But now it's more about like those places that you can truly get to, like you can get there. Like I can get to this national park that's 2,000 miles from me, but it still feels like a bucket list item. Like it still feels emotionally like a bucket list item, because you might not have been thinking about that 2 years ago, or you still might not be thinking about that being a normal trip for you. It's kind of a different type of trip than a trip you might not have taken had we not been stuck in the house for so long in 2020.
Yeah, and I think that's where, collaboration, as you mentioned, kind of becomes co-opetition now. I think it's really important, especially, I love the stronger together vibe. I think it's really important to like package those things for people and do it by kind of persona or personalities. Like if you're going with the kids, what are the things you haven't done? Maybe it's around, I want to see the Grand Canyon sometime in my life. So what are those places
Right.
around, on the way from Texas, because you may be taking a longer drive. So I think it's super, and especially with, ad budget still being compressed, I think getting together and doing good co-op, direct platform co-op, not crappy markup co-op. You know how I feel about that.
Right. Yeah. I there is I think there's a strategy that makes sense for the co-op when it comes to your road trip journeys and those places that make sense together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is a true model for pulling that together. It's not really going to be about getting a lot of agencies and getting a lot of people involved in, pulling the ad buys and multiple, there's going to be, we need to simplify that. We need to really simplify that. And I think it's less about the model for how the co-op works in terms of the advertising and more about the model in which the user could use that asset. Like, how can we develop something where if I'm going to take a road trip, how can I make it convenient for that person to use this asset and truly plan their trip based on what we're giving them? Is it, something that's downloadable that actually pinpoints stops along the way and gives them a true itinerary, like not a sample itinerary that we're all used to in the DMO world, but a true itinerary where you can really map out, places to stop, things to do on that stop, must check out places, kind of building those assets. And then once you've got this really amazing asset, I think then it comes down to what's the best way and the best place to kind of start positioning this asset with my co-opetition in that marketplace.
I love that. And that sparks something else that you and I have been talking about, like off of leisure, just a minute, to the meeting planners. Like, I love the downloadable aspect of it. I think we forget that we need to give them resources, not just to buy,
Right.
but kind of stay top of mind so that, they're like, oh, wow, so-and-so was really useful for me to do something. I think that makes a big difference. So I love the downloadables. I love those type of things.
Yeah. And it is a bigger need from a meeting standpoint. As a planner, they are absolutely thinking about making their attendees visitors in that destination. How can they get them, at the end of the day, how can they get them out of the meeting room and into the destination easily, where they feel like they have some guide or some, recommendations that make sense to them, but also can make it easy for them. So absolutely thinking about a downloadable piece that gives these attendees for these meetings a guide to really getting out and exploring the city. If it's live music, if it's, places to, have a group cocktail, breweries to stop into and do a group tour if they're doing tours at that time. So it's really finding those niche places to pull together for those planners. And that is a huge resource for them. I mean, that is, for a lot of planners, that makes or breaks that opportunity when you can make that part of their planning a little easier.
I think that's it too. And also another thing we should consider with the precipice of leisure travelers coming back is, I want to make sure to just say, I guess the PSA, right, is that DMOs can't forget who got them through the pandemic. We can't forget our residents. We can't forget our local services. I think, kind of just the whole fabric. I had a great conversation with a DMO CEO out of California yesterday, and that fabric's not really changing for a lot of them. And it really should be, because those are the guys that are there for you. They're there for your restaurants. They're there for your frontline employees, when the chips are down.
Right. And I think if you're releasing something, when it comes to a promotion, when it comes to a campaign, when it comes to a special rate, when it comes to something, thinking about those local people, giving them some sort of resident component to that, where they can take just as much of an advantage as someone coming from outside the destination, really makes an impact. And it also creates, going back to saying it takes a village. Your partners within the community is part of your village, but your residents in that community are the other part of your village. And if you are not appealing to those residents and giving them something that truly makes them feel appreciated, special, wanted within the destination. I mean, we got to want these guys in our restaurants and in our shopping centers and in our hotels, and they need to feel that way. You're really not activating part of your village, if you're not really appealing to that. And that, I mean, these are the guys that are sharing this stuff on social. They're, when they're bringing their family and friends in from out of town, this is the stuff that they're talking about. So really appealing to that part of your village. I mean, it's a crucial component to these campaigns. Crucial.
It is. And I see that part and these other components happening is becoming more and more of a blurred line, kind of blending between DMOs and chambers and EDCs. And, I still think it's really important for those guys to continue to play well together and support each other, because they support each one of those efforts.
Absolutely.
Hashtag collaborate.
Hashtag collaborate. I love it.
Well, cool. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited about our, our colleagues being able to get some good news and getting really creative with some strategy. I can't wait to see campaigns roll out. I saw some really good ones actually already roll out, kind of a welcome back message this week. And I'm just excited to do those. We'll share those in the group as we find really cool campaigns that we like.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.